Okay guys, so I said I'd do a basic jerky making, and I've got something for corned beef. A couple of the forums that I go to, a lot of great people have a lot of great ideas, and I'm just trying to get my input. Had a question about jerky and some marinades and how to do it. And jerky is super easy. You can use ground meat, you can use a regular roast. Now that one does have some fat on it. And what we want to do with that is we're just going to trim it off. Any cut of beef will work as long as it's super lean. Some of your darker red meats may have a little bit more of a beefy flavor. You can curb that by actually using a beef bouillon in your brine. But any of these will work. Your meat needs to be 90% plus lean. That's the reason deer works so well, is because you trim the fat off of it. And when you grind it, I mean, you're left with nothing but super lean meat. You have very, very little fat in there. For marinades, let's see, let's go to, first of all, if you're not doing a whole bunch of it, I usually use LEM product. Let's see where it's at. LEM, you can look them up online, sausage making stuff, and they have an excellent line. Usually their seasonings does 5-pound batches at a time. They're around $4, and they're worth it if you're not doing a whole lot. The Wild Game, it's like $7, and it does 15-16 pounds worth of seasoning. So the powdered smoke is something I wanted to get at. I use liquid smoke in most of my recipes, or powdered smoke, and you'd be surprised at how well that hickory powdered smoke works. That's a high country product. You can order from them online. A lot of stores carry them. I know Academy carries it. I think Atwood's may. Other things that you can use is just basic marinades. If you like soy sauce, you can marinate it in soy sauce. Teriyaki sauce, instead of making a homemade one, you can just get a cheap Walmart one. That'll work. Some of the spices that are specialized, I do like using cannon salt or non-iodized salt for my seasoning mixes. You can use Tender Quick. Tender Quick has a book you can actually order from, and it gives you all different kinds of recipes and measurements. And the rest of the thing is just basic household seasoning: salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, red pepper, chili powder, ginger. What else we got here? Cumin. One thing I want to go over is curing salt. Some people are for it, some people are against it. If you eat bacon, you're eating curing salts. This comes in real handy. This little bottle is enough to do 100 pounds worth of meat for $1.29. You use a quarter teaspoon for about each pound of meat, or 1 full teaspoon for 5 pounds. So I use that in my mixes, and right now I've got a basic recipe here. Let's see if we keep bringing it from top to bottom. 5 pounds of meat, ground or sliced. 5 teaspoons of non-iodized salt. 1 teaspoon of curing salt, optional. A teaspoon of black pepper. 4 cloves of garlic pressed and smashed, or a teaspoon of garlic powder. A half teaspoon of onion powder. Half teaspoon of chili powder, a tablespoon of brown sugar. You can add some more if you like a little bit more sweet to your product. And what I didn't write down here was my cayenne pepper. You know, start off with about a quarter teaspoon or an eighth, and adjust your heat after your first batch to what you like. Half cup Worcestershire, and a tablespoon of liquid smoke. You can adjust that too, because sometimes it's pretty potent. And then basically you're just going to mix all that together. If you're doing ground meat, you may want to add a little bit more water, or a little bit of water to it, so that way that you can work it into your meat really well. Get it. You don't want it too sticky, but after setting for a while, it will become dry and tacky, and I'm going to go through that and show you how to roll it out. Also, with your sliced meat, you can add a little bit of water just to make sure you cover it. I usually marinate mine in Ziploc bags, that way I can roll it over and flip it. But you're going to let it marinate at least 8 hours, 24 hours even better. And then dry it in your oven on the lowest setting. The best way to dry, get this camera loose. Okay, the best way to dry is using a jerky tray. It lets you lay your jerky out, it gives air circulation around it. These are around about $15 a piece. If you just want to dry it in a regular pan, you can, but after about about every 2 hours or so, you need to go in there and probably roll your jerky over just to make sure it's getting air circulation to both sides of it. I'm going to go ahead and start mixing up some meat and stuff, and then I'll show you the rest of the process. Okay guys, this is called a jerky gun, and you can spend money on one of these. It makes it go a lot quicker. Basically just like a cocking gun, depending on the consistency of your meat. It shoots out these nice little strips, just about perfect for drying. Sometimes you get little hang-ups in them, especially this is deer. And deer meat, you know, like I said, it has a little sinew in it, and sometimes they'll get plugged up in the end. The single jerky shooter instead of a double works better, but it's just about that simple. You make strips. So that's the fancy way. I'm going to finish this up, and then I'll show you the poor man's way, which I use all the time. Okay, and this is what I call the poor man's way. Take just part of your meat, get a baking sheet that will fit in your freezer, pat your meat out pretty flat on a piece of wax paper. Take another piece of wax paper, wax side down. Okay. Take your rolling pin, just keep rolling her flat. It does help if your rolling pin will fit both ways. And the way this works out, the way my rolling pin handles sit on the pan, it gives me a pretty uniform kind of a measuring stick. It don't have to be perfect. You just want it kind of real close to uniform. Okay. That's just about the right thickness. So what we're going to do is set this in the freezer. We'll give it about an hour to chill, and actually this needs to start to freeze. When you get done, you pull it out of the freezer, you come back in, take your pizza cutter, and just run strips. Okay? Once it's frozen, you know, that's going to handle real easy, and you can cut the strips, put it on your drying rack, like we got over there, or baking pan. Where's it at? Right there. And then stick it in the oven. It's just a matter of time. Okay guys, so here's what I've done with the roast. You can slice it against the grain on the meat, and that'll make a pretty tender jerky. Or you can slice it with the grain, okay, like this, and when it cures out, it'll be a tough jerky. Now, a way you can also do this is to slice it like that, but get you a meat mallet tenderizer and use the bumpy edge on it and hit your meat a few times, and that'll give it a tenderizing to it, and it'll kind of be a little bit more like the store-bought packaged stuff. But anyhow, I'm going to get this all in a bag and marinate it. Whatever you do, do not use any kind of metal bowls. If you're using the curing salts especially, you can have a reaction with the metals, and it's just not worth it. And even if you don't have a reaction, it could pull flavor out of the metal that goes into your meat, and it's not great. So anyway, I've got a wonderful mess going on that I'm going to have to get this on the marinade and start getting cleaned up. Church in here in a little bit. And make another short video here real quick on brining. I can't remember the lady's name, but something on making corned beef. And I do have a recipe for that, and I'll just go over the recipe and the process real quick. But we'll catch y'all later. Okay, so I'm going to finish up the poor man method. This should have been frozen a little bit longer. I mean, kind of running short on time, but it is kind of tacky, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it and see if it won't come out alright. And it don't have to be perfect, guys. Just, you know, inch, somewhere around an inch, inch and a half wide strips. Pizza cutter will do a number on the ground meat. This is actually a little bit on the thick side on that edge. I used a smaller pan for the second batch. I guess another thing a guy can do before it gets... Oh crap. I'm rushing this, guys. Really, it is simple. Probably I should have went ahead and flipped the meat over. And you can see the lines that was already cut, but just follow that up with a second cut. Get it to separate good. This piece I know is too thick. If you let these get good and froze when you do it, they will come apart in strips. So when you go to lay them out, I mean, it's just something about like that. And they don't have to be perfect full strips. You know, you can have flat pieces, chunks, just as long as they're thin and they're narrow enough to dry out. I think somebody's been cutting pizza on a pizza stone. Anyhow, like I said, I'm rushing it. It's still not totally froze, but you got the basic idea. The one thing I do want to, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, do not use any marinades that add any type of oil. I know McCormick's makes an awesome mesquite marinade for like chicken and stuff, and it calls for a 1/4 cup of oil and then water. If you're going to use something like that, go with straight water, because if you put oil in any of your marinade, your meat will not dry. It'll always have that oily film texture to it. It will become rancid a lot quicker after it is dried. So anyway, this is simple jerky. I'm going to go ahead and probably put this back in the freezer and let it finish freezing so I can cut it easier. If you don't have a pizza cutter, which that one seems not to be doing as good as what it normally does, just use a good sharp knife to score. Like I said, if it's frozen, it's not going to tear. But obviously, as loose as this is, mine's not frozen. So anyhow, we're going to get back to it, and I'm going to finish this up. This is going to be the end of this, and I hope y'all try it. I know if you do, you'll like it. Have a good one.